So what is a strong position? What is my position in relationship to this whole pattern of events? A strong position, a position in which everyone wins except the shame-based persona of the facilitator body. Meaning the shame-based persona, the belief system around shame and punishment and mixing mistakes with one's being, that persona will do anything at all imaginable. Kill, lie, cheat, destroy their career in order to avoid admitting and responding to mistakes. Because the shame-based persona conflates making mistakes with being a mistake, and a shame-based persona in a sociopathic cult conflates responsibility, the ability and willingness to respond, with punishment and trauma. Because that's how shame-based parents raise their children. Blame often the children for the incompetencies of the parent. Fail to mitigate many mistakes through competent parenting. And then when the child makes many mistakes, make it absolutely clear that that child is flawed and unlovable, and then punish them to the point where that shame-based child, carrying the shame of the cult and the family, will do anything to avoid being seen in all of the mistakes that they make. Because they don't know what they're doing, of course. They're children raised by incompetent parents. This persona, and it's a persona that anyone with psychological literacy can have a lot of compassion for because it's in all of us. This persona has an agenda. And its agenda is very simple. I will do everything imaginable to hide the mistake that I am. And I'll do it by trying to be perfect. I'll do it by trying to be superhuman. I'll do it by deflecting and denying all ability to respond. That's all responsibility is. An adult responds to love when someone is in trauma, particularly when that trauma is caused by the person in question. The shame-based persona responds in fear and tries to deny to themselves, to the people they've hurt, and to everyone else that there's any problem at all. No problem around here. That they are capable of responding to that problem. That's a particularly difficult position to hold as a leader. I'm incapable of responding to the problem that I've caused, but I want to lead. I'm incapable because I either don't know what to do or I'm not willing to do it. I've knocked my kid into the pool before they can swim. I could jump in and get him out, but I'm not willing to because I've got my nice suit on. I'm not willing to be an adult and respond to the crisis my mistake has induced. I'm not willing to, or I don't know how. So that can last for a little bit. but I'm not willing to learn how. I don't know how, because when people try and tell me, I don't read their emails. When people recommend books, I don't read those either. When people suggest get competent training in my field, I don't do that either. And when people suggest that I disclose my incompetence and lack of training so that others can protect themselves and not hire the plumber that floods the house, fixing the tiny drip, I don't do that either. Meaning, I'm unwilling to respond, to mitigate my own ignorance, and I don't know how to respond to fix the mess that I've made. And I'm unwilling to lead or leave the leadership position, because there is nothing abnormal about being completely and utterly confused, fucked up, and shame-based in the areas of human and sexual relationships. That's our cult's norm. But a leader that's competent has to take us out of there. So my position is very simple. Anyone involved in escalating sexuality in a professional capacity, anyone, a coach, a therapist, a prostitute, whatever, must have as their foundation the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm, which in this context is first, don't sexually abuse your clients. Number one. Number two, when you do sexually abuse your clients, because if you are in an organization in this country, in this culture, whether it's 1 in a million or 1 in 10, you are going to sexually abuse your clients. When you sexually abuse your clients, don't traumatize them unnecessarily at the same time. That is also going to happen. Is it 1 in a million? 1 in 10. When you traumatize someone unnecessarily, don't turn it into PTSD. When you turn it into PTSD, hopefully that's 1 in a billion, own up to it and refer the person to get competent help. It's not a very difficult position to grasp. The next one could be a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think so. Neither I nor anyone at high, as evidenced by a sustained pattern of traumatization and sexual abuse, has the competency to design the system, to design the protocol of training the facilitators, of monitoring the facilitators, of deciding accountability in the interest of the client, in the interest of the patient. That has to come from maybe 2 or more trained sexual abuse and trauma psychologists who have no conflict of interest and who are given the mandate, I want you to come up with a data-based protocol that has the client, the high participant, the community member at heart, with their well-being in mind. To prevent sexual abuse, to prevent unnecessary trauma, to prevent unnecessary shame, to stop the trauma becoming PTSD, and clean up your mess when you fail at all of the above. And that looks like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Protocol by protocol by protocol. Now, my position is that whatever that protocol is, developed by the best people in the field, with the high participant in mind, referencing data. This seems to work best when people are doing this and this. Referencing data. That anyone who fights that idea, the idea that, why worry about 1 in 1,000 participants being sexually abused by a client? We've had 40,000. There's only been about 40 of those people who've been sexually abused by a high facilitator. 1 in 1,000. Big deal. That anyone who thinks hiring a psychologist who actually knows what they're doing in this field and putting the participant first is a terrible idea. That the world would win more with more ignorance and more incompetence has no business getting anywhere near leadership in any position, but certainly not in the position that would allow them to re-traumatize and re-sexually abuse the wide number of highly traumatized and sexually abused members of our cult. They just need to vacate their position. Their ignorance is understandable. Their hubris is understandable. Their sociopathic attitude towards those influenced by their beliefs and choices is understandable in this cult. And it is understandable that we do not want them in a leadership position. We want them getting help. Anyone who's read The Childhood of Donald Trump should have immense compassion for that terrified, shame-based little boy, and should be horrified that our cult gave him the commander-in-chief position. What this tells us is that a majority of our people not only cannot spot and protect themselves from sociopathic behavior, not only cannot spot and protect themselves from outright lies that endanger themselves and the country, but enable it. In other words, Trump is not the problem. We are. But we can be less of a problem by the simple process of saying, we don't know what we're doing. So let's hire the best in the field to design our system that will make blind idiots, such as we are, less likely to fuck ourselves up and fuck our clients and our patients up as we bumble around in our mission of a world where more people win. That's my position. Number one, that I should have the best system of protocols available to ensuring the traumatic and sexual safety of every one of its clients. Number two, that anyone that thinks High should have substandard or abusive protocols should get as far away from leadership as possible. And anyone voting advocating for a leader who does not want a data-based best practice that produces the best safety record we can possibly have, should get help for their self-hatred. Because if you vote for someone who is incompetent, chauvinistic, and hates themselves and you enough to be just fine with abusing their own clients, you hate yourself. And that needs help. It's not your fault. Children always internalize the hatred of their parents. It's not uncommon for a little child to get that their parents resent and hate them for existing. And when they desperately need love and affection and reach out to that contempt and say, Dad, Mom, what do I have to do to get your love, to be liked, to be tolerated at least? And the answer is simple. Get the fuck out of my face. Stop existing. And the little boy says, okay, I'll give it a shot. I will vote for people who will hurt me. I will get into relationships with people who abuse me. I will hurt myself and destroy myself. Then will you love me? Not until you're dead. Well, we've got more people committing suicide than dying in traffic accidents. So, nothing wrong with these people hating themselves. That's what a psychologically illiterate cult produces. Nothing wrong with people who hate themselves voting and enabling leaders that will hate them. It's in integrity with the mission of self-hatred. It just has nothing to do with a public nonprofit and nothing to do with best practices, nothing to do with love, intimacy, or healthy relationships, and should be kept far away from sex, since sex will amplify that hate. Number 3, that unlicensed facilitators with a sustained pattern of shame-based secrecy, communication control, and abuse of their clients do not have the competency to develop these protocols, and neither do you and I. Therefore, they need to be entrusted in competent professionals who have the participant in mind in a format that cannot be misunderstood. Meaning, we were chosen to do this because of our background in this, and this. We have no other conflict of interest other than the safety of our participants. We put our licensed reputation on the line with everything we say here, which we represent to be the best practices available for these goals. And here's what they are. Here's the data they reference. Here's the books that you can read to understand these protocols. That's a big start. Then, leadership, intelligent, love-based leadership needs to be selected by which human beings, who gives a shit what their current roles are, care enough about themselves and others to learn the protocols and the reasons for them and to honor them. That's it. And that those leaders that want nothing to do with those protocols because they actually work and don't enable sexual addiction or promiscuity or whatever it is the game is, just leave. That leadership be chosen by who's committed to those protocols which includes, of course, when you have a history of shame-based secrecy and communication control at the expense of the public. It includes a technology and protocol that the facilitators and board members, all of whom are complicit in my sexual abuse and you're not knowing about it, all of whom are complicit in causing my PTSD and not responding. Legally, morally, psychologically, complicit in destroying the life of a participant, step by step by step. That they cannot censor the voice of the victim of trauma and sexual abuse in their leadership and in their community. That they're taken out of the role of gatekeeper. If necessary, a psychologist can be the gatekeeper. And you write whatever you want on this platform, but if it's inconsistent with best practices, we'll recommend a book, we'll make some comments, and then we actually learn something. That's my position. Now, this is a position that leads to more people winning. This is a position that works. It's a position that the more science you bring to the table, the stronger the position gets. The more legal attention you bring to the table, the stronger the position gets. The more attention the community pays to this position, the safer they will feel. The more the public knows about this position, the more they would consider sending their child or partner or taking themselves to high. It is the strongest position imaginable because it is unassailable by any part of the system except the facilitator shame-based persona. The facilitator shame-based persona does not want a goddamn piece of this system. Not the idea, not me talking about it, no trained psychologist having a look at anything, no debate, not being on camera, no explanation, no changes, no admission of gross negligence, criminally or otherwise. The shame-based persona wants absolutely no attention anywhere near the domain where it is terrified that it is a mistake because it made a mistake and then made more mistakes and then more mistakes to hide the first mistake, and on it goes. The longer the shame-based persona of the high facilitator body runs the show, the more unsalvageable any legitimate future or future at all of the Human Awareness Institute becomes. Because the shame-based persona in all of us, but in this case, the facilitator body, will systematically undermine every positive possibility imaginable, will sell out innocence, children, savings, intelligence, sanity, for one agenda: hiding the deeply held belief of an abused child that if I made a mistake, I am a mistake. If I am a mistake, I will be all alone and lonely. I will be hated and I deserve to be punished. And so, I will do anything possible. I didn't do it. He did it. To shift the blame, to avoid learning, to avoid looking, I will do anything possible rather than save my job, protect my participants, follow my own mission, follow the law. There's one loser, and it's a big loser. Because in our cult, that shame is not lifted from the child. It's dumped there by incompetent parents and then left to run the country. So we get Trump and we get high. It doesn't matter who you name. That shame-based persona is running our cult. And it is destroying our cult. And it needs love, discipline, and attention. Not beatings. The discipline to say, get the fuck out of a leadership position until you've got help. Don't end up in jail trying to prove that you didn't do it. It's not your fault. You're just a poor board member. You're only a fucking high facilitator. It's not my fault. Oh, don't do it. And anyone who cares about anyone, don't enable it. Stand up to it. You know. That persona, I mean, look at Trump's power struggle right now. He's doing us such a favor. This is the shame-based persona. If he loses in his family system, he is unlovable, will get nothing, will be despised, will be humiliated, will be hated. So he's willing to destroy the entire legal system of the country for one goal: to protect himself from the public perception that he made a mistake, that he is incompetent, when he's got no reason to believe he would be competent. Highly abused children generally make poor leaders unless they do their work, which the cult does not assist with. So most don't. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with high facilitators. They just have a pact with one another. We'll cover your many inadequacies and shames and mistakes, and I'll cover yours, and we'll all pretend to be superhuman and talk about saving the entire planet. And somewhere in all that, we'll hide our shame. We'll hide that terrified, and we'll talk about how bad Trump is and all that, but we have nothing to do with that. We're about love. Except we're destroying the entire legal system and framework and mission statement to protect our fear as well. And we don't get that that's a problem. And neither do many of our participants. Meaning, if the fractal pattern is true, which it generally is, the micro and macro representations of similar themes being addressed by the psyche and the cult in moments of time, the high facilitators should be able, through lies, through inventing reality, through bringing in bizarre people who refuse to go on record. Ask the facilitators to name all the people supporting them and what protocols and what data. These guys are cowards. I've heard from multiple people throughout, Peter's lawyer thinks I should do this. Well, good to know. Peter's energy worker, this person, that person, they all think it's my fault. It's good to know. I think Trump has Sidney Powell doing the same thing. The people that support profound sociopathic incompetence that damages everyone, they're not at the top of their field. They don't reference facts and data. But you should be able to count on, 40%, 40 something. Let's just say that 30% of Trump supporters will go all the way, will cause riots when they have not been able to win a single battle in court. Well, it's the same dynamic. If this goes to court, Hy and Peter and Ann and every board member will lose their positions legally, point by point by point by point. And even the ones that don't have laws for, because we're a pretty reptilian cult, so we don't make laws that protect people's feelings. Why would we? They're just the feminine side of every human being. Who cares about those? We, in fact, invent lies. We say sticks and stones, material stuff, masculine stuff, will break my bones, masculine stuff, but words can never hurt me. Now, every single human being who's ever lived knows that that's a complete and utter lie. Knows that words can be 1,000 times more painful than a stick or a stone. It's just data-based. Would I prefer Ann Watts to take a stick and throw it at me and then apologize? Or would I prefer her in a therapeutic capacity to convince me and other sexual abuse survivors that it's in my interest not to protect the public by coming forward? That it's in my interest to be a shame-based secret so that she can avoid her incompetence. Well, that one few set of words, all it took was my therapist getting a bit angry, getting a bit defensive, letting me know, hey, my love could be withdrawn here if you push this boundary. All that therapeutic support and boosting I've been giving you, I could just rip it all away. All you have to do is agree to be our shame-based secret for your own good. You have to admit that it's for your own good, because then I look like a shit. And I don't want to look like a shit. I'm not going to look like a shit. God damn you, I'm not looking like a shit. I am a shit, but I'm not going to be. So those words cost me 6 years of my life in pain. Because it means that in order to do the right thing, I have to put my life on the line to fight a very large group that has strong unconscious reptilian drives, because Hy has not done its job to teach psychological literacy. You know, Trump can get his supporters to murder people and convince them that it's good for the country. Hy can convince people to send anonymous phone calls attacking sexual abusers and convince them that this is in protection of the Great Human Awareness Institute, which is committed to secrecy, not human awareness. People who can't think cannot figure this out. Well, we raise people to copy the teacher, not to think. So what's wrong with them copying the teacher and not thinking? Well, it means it's a hell of an important thing that the teacher, at least, who's being copied, thinks. Well, what have you seen that would suggest that Peter Sandhill is capable of thinking objectively in this terrain, or Ann Watts, and acting on that? Because you also have the same thing. You know, Tony Robbins talked about Bill Clinton's thing and all that, and how Tony Robbins asked Clinton, and Clinton considered telling the truth to the American people. Considered it. Told Tony he would. Oh, it's a good idea, Tony. Be in integrity. But then when he got in front of the microphone, his shame piped up. I never had sexual relationships with that woman. It's wonderful. Shame in our cult comes to the leadership position, because when you shame children the way that we do, shame is amongst the most terrifying parts to encounter. Now, the rational mind of any sane person can grasp every single thing I'm saying. Any of the best psychologists, the best lawyers, the best nonprofit consultants, the best business consultants, ethical professors, trauma therapists, PTSD therapists, district attorneys, the general public are all on board with what I've said. But we can depend on an instinctive, shame-based faction within the facilitator body and within the community to fight the position that is most statistically correlated with High's mission. More people winning, more people knowing what love is, more people avoiding being traumatized by their therapist. So really, the battle going on here is the battle between shame, terror, ignorance, and abuse, the very thing High's mission states that it's committed to ending. And love, into me you see, and healthy sexuality. Now the twist is that the emotionally illiterate, psychologically illiterate, abused, highly sensitive, participant, patient with Asperger's syndrome is on the right side of that math. And every single one of the High facilitators and board, and a minimum of 1/3 of the team and participant body, is fanatically on the wrong side of that math. Well, as above, so below. Look to the US election, look to the High shame-based power structure. We have to sort this out together. Shame-based people are not going away as long as we shame and abuse them as children. We will raise another round of High facilitators, another round of Trump. We're doing it as we speak. There's no way out of it other than parental literacy. Other than each individual taking the ability and willingness to respond, to actually respond and read the data. And your cult is telling you 1,000 times a day, be normal. Don't become psychologically literate. Don't care for your feminine self. Don't prioritize relationships. Prioritize sex and breast size. And don't become trauma literate. Don't serve your community. Don't rely on the best experts. Pick a charismatic voice that tells you what you want to hear and helps you all avoid your shame. We're number one. Make America great again. Not by doing it, by just lying. Trump hasn't stopped the exodus of jobs overseas. He didn't prevent climate change. He didn't stop the obesity epidemic or the childhood incest epidemic or anything. But isn't it nice to be great again? The wrong path begins by denial. And it would be nice to say that the Democrats, in this analogy, that would be me, actually know what they're doing. Be nice. But anyone who looks deep into politics and why someone like Andrew Yang will never get a chance with great positions, and a chronic sexual abuser like Joe Biden will in a state of mental deterioration and hypocrisy be pushed into leadership for being willing to accept bribes. Nobody has to switch to the other side. We need to switch to data, not my opinion, not unlicensed facilitators' opinion. We need to go to data. We need to go to objective third parties who don't take bribes and who cite why everything they're saying is based on data. Data is the ally of anyone who wants to break the shame cycle. Without it, the addiction to shame is too strong. But if you understand that this protocol leads to 20 people in 1,000 being sexually abused and traumatized, and this protocol gets it down to only 1 in 1,000, and this protocol gets it down to 1 in 2,000 and does a better job of cleaning up the mess. You can spell that out by a competent authority. Even the shame-based facilitators may begrudgingly change their behavior. But will they vote to hire the competent professional who will reveal all their mistakes? Never. Never. They may flee the country, commit suicide, raise a rabble-raising army of attack. That's what Trump is doing. He doesn't want to lose the election. So if he loses, let's just try and have militants in the street. Let's bring in the They may do any number of things. They won't do the one thing that any intelligent person and any objective person would begin with. Hire someone objective to put your clients and your participants and the public first, as a public nonprofit receiving a tax benefit for that very reason. That's my position. Just be aware that in the context of transparent media, of unabridged media, anyone who fights science and competency and public interest damages themselves, their organization, and their reputation. Anyone who fights this position is doing it out of shame, fear, and self-hate. Because a loving person welcomes data, seeks it out, and puts the future of themselves, their organization, and their clients ahead of their fear, their ignorance, and their shame. That's the distinction point. So don't trust me. I have no business being a sexual therapist or anything either. Thank goodness Peter has told me that. Meaning, he didn't tell me that. He told me I was talented and all that. I'm sure I would have done very well, and I'm so grateful that I learned how incompetent I was before I was offered a position of influence and power. As a result, I can decline those positions because I have no business, as someone who hasn't worked all this stuff out for myself, taking money or trust or innocence to do any of this. But I'm still 100% in favor of all data, which means that I am more competent to lead than anyone in the high power structure, and I should not be leading. That's a disturbing thought. Meaning I would rather someone like me, who will bring in professionals, send out surveys, put the public first, apologize. I'd rather someone like me was running high than any of the high facilitators or board members. and I know enough to know I have no business doing that. And if I do that kind of thing, the very least I can do is do it for free, because at best I'm a student with lots of issues. Well, no one will fault that position. It's a strong position. And if you stand in a strong position, the more pressure is brought to the position, the weaker those fighting the strong position become, until they destroy everything they claim to care about. You're welcome to stand in the strongest position there is. And then you can be on the side of evolution, of science, of best practices that are the essence of love.